Welcome back to For Goodness Sake, where as a former Mormon, I take a look at the good things that I carry with me into my new, more secular worldview. My name's Tom, and today's topic is education. This is something that's always been really important to me as a Mormon. I had the privilege of going to BYU for a short time before I transferred to the University of Utah. And I don't know if it's the official motto, but on campus at BYU, you often see enter to learn, go forth to serve. And honestly, I love that motto. I think it should be the motto of every university. Enter to learn, go forth to serve. Of course, both of those things should apply to our entire lives. We should always be learning, we should always be serving. I think it's really interesting to think about early Mormon history and how education was so important to the early saints. There's these stories of the school of the prophets, where Joseph Smith started up a little school for the people who wanted to learn theology. They actually did study Greek and Hebrew and sources that came from outside of Mormonism. But it was never with the aim of challenging the theology of Joseph Smith. It was always with the understanding of sort of catching up with Joseph Smith, as if he was already on this higher plane. And now we just need to learn all the things so that we can be as knowledgeable as he is and as close to God as he is. I think that this idea is really well captured in one of the revelations of Joseph Smith, Doctrine and Covenants, section 88, verse 118. Seek ye out of the best books words of learning. Seek learning, even by study and also by faith. Well, there you go. I embrace everything about this scripture except for the last four words, and also by faith. Why? In my experience, what this effectively means is that we study and learn, but we already have our conclusion picked out. We already know that the church is true, that Jesus Christ is true, etc. And now we're just studying to try to kind of fill in the gaps. We're studying to get all the background knowledge because we already know the truth. That's what the "and also by faith" ends up meaning. Whereas I just think that that's totally contrary to intellectual honesty. Really, what it should say is seek ye learning, even by study, and then come up with your own conclusion. Study out of all the best books and gather all the best information, and then whatever you learn, that's what you've learned, right? You should just follow it. Another verse from Mormon scripture, this time from the Book of Mormon, that really captures this relationship is 2 Nephi chapter 9, verse 28 and 29. Oh, the vainness and the frailties and the foolishness of men! When they are learned, they think they are wise, and they hearken not unto the counsel of God. For they set it aside, supposing that they know of themselves. Wherefore their wisdom is foolishness, and it profiteth them not, and they shall perish. But to be learned is good, if ye hearken unto the counsels of God. I always loved this scripture, and I thought it sounded so wise. Put God first, and then spend the rest of your life learning. As long as you kind of prioritize it right, you just learn, and education is super important. But now I realize that it's just completely wrong-headed. Effectively, what it's saying is it's okay to learn as long as you don't learn something that threatens your theology. Just keep your theology in place, make sure you believe in God and the things first, and anything you learn, make sure you contextualize it within that worldview. And then it's okay to learn whatever you want to learn. And yeah, it's just not the right way to learn. Learning means new information. It means information that challenges your worldview, that might lead you in completely new and different directions. If you start the learning process already knowing, okay, well, I'm fine to learn this, but as long as it doesn't threaten my God view, then you've closed yourself off to the learning that could happen with that new information. And it's really tragic. Overcoming the logic in this scripture was a big step for me in my journey, because it basically is saying if you learn something or accept something that is contrary to God or the gospel, it means that you think you're smarter than God. You're being very prideful. And of course, just logically, how could any of us say that we're smarter than God when we've defined God as the most intelligent being ever? None of us can ever be smarter than him, of course. But eventually I had to just come around to the idea that we can critique the idea of God. It doesn't mean I'm smarter than God. It doesn't mean I'm smarter than anybody. But I am smart enough to govern my own life, right? That's always been part of the idea. I have to make the decisions for my life. And I have to assume that I'm smart enough to make those decisions. So, where it comes to how I decide to spend my life, I have no choice but to accept whatever intelligence I have to be sufficient to make the decisions for my life. And if by studying I figure out that I think God probably doesn't exist, well, that's the intelligence that God apparently gave me, or that in any case I have. So here's the real point I want to make. Obedience and faith are not helpful to personal growth. Information and agency are critical to personal growth. And the truth is, Mormonism prizes all four of those. So I have nothing against the importance that Mormonism places on education and agency, gaining information and then using the best information to make the best decisions we can possibly make. What I reject is the idea that there's a one right answer before we begin, and that what God really wants at the end of the day is obedience or faith, which is essentially lack of information. If there's anybody who doubts, by the way, that Mormonism is based on withholding information, just think about the plates, okay? The gold plates. They could have been here in a museum. We could have had archaeologists studying the inscriptions. Why not? It would have been awesome. It would have been fantastic. It would have absolutely proved beyond any doubt that Joseph Smith was a perfect translator, because we'd have all the Egyptologists reading it and going, oh yeah, this is the best interpretation of these engravings. Why withhold information? There's no reason. God should be giving all the information all the time to help us enable agency and enable us to make decisions so that we can make the best decision possible. Let's pursue education. Let's pursue learning. Let's pursue growing personally. And let's do it through education, through making good decisions. And the more information we can have, the better. The more information we have, the more good we can do for goodness sake.